Hey, it's me, and welcome to Trump Mafia. Now, I want to talk about the sad decline of Europe. Europe right now is desperately pathetic and pathetically desperate, and I will explain why they have no future and what will happen. But first, I want to give you an update because I think some of you are listening to me right now. I remember you from 2016, right? Well, I've been on patreon.com/Trump Mafia every day posting around. And of course, I'm completely bankrupt. I am eating roadkill every day. I mean, it's not a good life. But I've been supporting Trump the whole time. So that's the good thing. And YouTube played a role in that because in May of 2017, I was getting 1,000 subs per month, right? Suddenly they deleted the whole channel. Why? Because I was mentioned in the New York Times and in Facebook meetings. Suddenly my channel's gone for no reason. So they brought it back 4 months later, but it was completely handicapped and a shell of its former self. But still, I was able to make videos, right? Now, last summer during the campaign, suddenly my channel's gone. They deleted the whole channel and they emailed me to say, your channel, Trump Mafia, is never coming back again on YouTube. Never. Never, ever. And I'm like, wow, what the hell happened, right? I didn't do anything wrong. But this was around the time that you had assassination attempts on President Trump and obviously the campaign, right? So I don't know if somebody in government was telling YouTube to delete my channel or whatnot, but they did. Now they reinstated the channel just recently after 8 months and kind of apologizing, saying, we understand your frustration and, we brought back your channel. And when I looked at what they did to my channel when it came back, it turned out that some person deleted like 50 videos for all kinds of reasons, right? 50, like somebody took a machine gun to my video list and deleted all these videos, and they were perfectly fine videos. Some of them were just clips from CNN or whatnot, and others were commentaries, but harmless. They've been there for like 6 years, and suddenly all of them deleted, right? Which gives them a reason to like delete the whole channel, because look, 50 videos are out of line. 50, 50, right? So I don't know if somebody went insane at the YouTube headquarters, or if that was just the way they handled getting rid of pro-Trump channels for the election. And Trump won. And you have a new DOJ, a new FCC chairman. Suddenly they bring back my channel. I think I understand what happened. Anyway, I'm here, and if you want to pledge like $500 a month, you can go to patreon.com/Trump Mafia. If I can get 10,000 people to pledge $500 per month, that would be a good thing. I know math. But seriously now, I want to talk about Europe because we all kind of like Europe, the caricatures and the stereotypes. The beret wearing mime with a baguette under the Eiffel Tower, or some fat British guy with bad teeth and a bowler hat and an umbrella walking in London, right, with a bulldog. Stuff like that. And Germans in amazingly nice uniforms invading the rest of Europe. Oh, okay, let's not mention that. But the problem with Europe is that they have nothing. They don't really have resources. It's a very small continent, and they don't have oil and gas. And that was also the reason why Germany invaded Russia in World War II, right? They were looking for oil, because otherwise, no matter how good you're fighting, you don't have the fuel, so to speak, for the ongoing war. And so that was, of course, their demise. You go in, of course, that leads to your destruction. You don't go in, it leads to your destruction. So it was kind of desperate, empathetic in a way, because it could have been handled in a different way, but that's how the cookie crumbled, as they say. But now you have the same problem for Europe, right? They don't have oil and gas, they don't have many resources. They lost all their colonies. You have to remember that Europe was really the center of Earth, and they ruled the seas, had colonies all over Earth. And we're talking about South America. Even our continent was basically controlled by the Europeans, and we came from the Europeans, right? Our nation is born out of that history. Asia, Africa. But now Europe lost all their colonies, and so they don't have the resources. They got rich, they created a lot with that money, but now they just have like a bank account, and even combining into the European Union and putting tariffs on all the countries to protect their own, it's not even helping. Again, if you don't have oil and gas and you depend on other countries, you're in trouble. And you don't have the colonies anymore. Even now, the influence of France, for example, is waning. They're being kicked out of all these African countries, the Middle East. Nobody cares anymore what Macaroni or France says. But he, just like the leaders of the other European nations, and especially the fascists at the EU, they still act like they run Earth, right? Like they run the world. And it's mostly like, listen to me now, I'm saying something. And China and Russia and we don't really care. And what President Trump has been saying about the EU is correct. I mean, they were really created to rip us off and to make themselves richer. And in the end, all these globalists, these free trade people, including these libertarians, they all helped Europe really to survive all this time. And the reason they're eyeballing Russia is because they want Russia as a colony. Napoleon and the rest of them, they all wanted the riches from Russia, all the resources. And like I said, the oil and gas, but also lumber and rare earth and, the living space, you could say. How do you say that in German? Lebensraum. Yeah, I forgot. And so they really want Ukraine to be like the spearhead, because they themselves, with their armies, they can't do anything. I mean, if they go up against Russia, Europeans would lose. Yeah, they would lose. Even France and the UK and Germany, they feel like they're very strong, but they're not. And when you see the Russian machine in action, I mean, it's really something to behold, and their special operations are, top level. I mean, these are military people, and they don't give up, and they'll do anything. And they're protecting their sovereignty. So you can understand that they were provoked. I mean, all the talking points that I heard these last 3 years, it made me crazy, because it was all kind of so stupid, nonsensical, illogical, and just plain fairy tales, made up stories, right? And it's all social media and bot farms and people that are paid just to lie. And that's not how you run a war. That's not how you can win a war. You have to be hyper realistic, and the Russians are hyper realistic when it comes to war, and they're not afraid to go in. And they also have a very big advantage, which is the experience and the history also. I mean, they went up against the Germans in World War II, and one of the reasons they were able to prevail is not just manpower, but the artillery. And as you can see, if you've been following the truth of what happened in Ukraine, artillery played a great role. But also their manufacturing of arms, they don't have to depend on other countries and little stockpiles from here and there like the Europeans. You have the Swedish meatball IKEA system to defeat Russian missiles, and I'm like, oh, okay. Or the German sauerkraut artillery system, and a couple of Leopard tanks, and the French baguette artillery. I mean, that's all going to make a big difference, right? Oh, F-16s, okay. With 5 F-16s, you can really destroy Russia. And I'm like, what are these people thinking? But coming back to the original point, which is Europe is desperately pathetic and pathetically desperate, it's kind of sad to see. Do we want Europe to survive? Well, if you look at Europe now, do they really have the same values as we do? They're attacking Christianity. They're attacking freedom of speech. They're taxing the hell out of people there. They're importing hordes and hordes of foreigners from overseas, obviously non-Christians, and they're destroying their own sovereignty. Each member state of the EU and the UK itself, they're all destroying their own sovereignty, their history, their tradition, and that tells you that they're lost. You know, the reason we all have these stereotypes and caricatures of all these European countries is because they built a history over many centuries, and it's something I admire. You know, you look at the past, it's incredible, but it's no longer the case. Now it's really pathetic. I mean, to look at Europeans, and you know, sometimes you have to understand you're not what you were anymore, and they just cannot take the L. They cannot understand it. They still think they run the world, and it's not true. The problem Europe really has is not just the lack of resources. The continent has always been about empires and kings and queens and big government. And so there's no real conservatism in Europe. I mean, even their conservatives are globalists and they have the same policies as the left. It's just kind of like decades ago, or not that long ago, we had rhino Republicans, and there were globalists just like the Democrats, so there was no real difference. And you do have uprisings of populist parties that listen more to the people, and they're always a victim of the system in Europe, where these big government people, like the so-called conservatives, prefer to combine with far-left communists to kind of ignore the up-and-coming populist party, to keep them out of power, so nothing will ever change. And you also have a problem in Europe where there's not that much conservatism at all, because sometimes even the conservatives, like hyper-conservatives, what they call the right wing, they tend to be identity politics people, you know, maybe elements of some racism or this or that, but it ends up being big government also. So in the end, so many people in Europe are used to big government. They are big government people, and they have flavors. You know, some are more about A, B, and C values and traditions, and the others are more about X, Y, Z, but they're all about the same alphabet, so to speak. Whereas in our nation, real conservatism is not social conservatism, which is really a bunch of liberals with traditionalist values, so they don't get along with ordinary Democrats or some of these far-left people. Okay. Real conservatism is about reducing government, getting rid of regulations, getting government out of your lives, that you have more individual freedoms. So that's why our Bill of Rights, the Constitution, we're so lucky. They don't have that in Europe. If they had, maybe Europe would have a chance to grow, you know, to have the European dream like we have the American dream. It's coming back. It's coming back in the golden age of Trump, because he is the most conservative president we ever had. Number one. I mean, he's cutting waste and reducing government, eliminating all these regulations and freeing up our country and our people to perform. Businesses, individuals, we all have more freedoms because of this conservative president. And yeah, on social issues, he can be a little bit flexible and this and that. Good. We're not about identity politics, which social conservatives, if you look at them, it's pretty much about identity politics. Like I said, the ABC versus the XYZ, but it's all the alphabet. When you look at many of these social conservatives, they're actually left wingers that are just not agreeing with the far left or the woke stuff. But for the rest, they're not conservative at all. And as I mentioned, the libertarians, they're basically hippies from the 60s that claim to be all for liberty, but they're also left wing. In the end, President Trump was able to build a coalition of so many different types of people, fake conservatives, social conservatives, a lot of left wing people. And he successfully created this coalition to have an amazing victory. So the golden age of Trump now, because the first term was also a golden age, but this is really the time when he can do so much, having won the popular vote and the deep state having failed. I mean, they really tried everything, and the Democrats are in disarray because if they cannot cheat, they cannot win. That's my opinion. And the whole scam with the fundraising, the Ukraine scam, the climate change scam, and every other scam they're running, it's very sad because we're talking about people that became big, won elections, and they did not deserve it. It was not based on merit. So in many ways, the Democrat Party is DEI. It's a kind of fake construct. It's a house of cards. And so President Trump comes in, and he also exposed that many Republicans of the past were really not conservative at all. Even Ronald Reagan, look, it seems like he was a pretty good president in the first term. The second term was really the first term of H.W. Bush, I'm sad to say, taking advantage of the ill health of Ronald Reagan. You had the 1986 amnesty and the rest of it. But also, Ronald Reagan made a deal with the Rhino part of the GOP, which are really leftists, big government people. So the Bushes and the rest of them were sabotaging Ronald Reagan in 1980 in the primaries, and he decided to make a deal with them. So he took in H.W. Bush as a VP, took in the snake. Remember the snake poem? It really does apply to Bush and his cronies. And as you saw after Reagan, it was decades of rhinos and the Uni Party, right? But I blame Ronald Reagan. He could have been like Trump. He could have scuttled the whole Department of Education, for example. He could have gotten a real conservative as VP. He still would have won, in my opinion. But he did not. And so, yeah, at the beginning, he did do some of the things that Trump is doing, some of the things. But then afterwards, I guess, you had all these rhinos in place, and these are not conservatives. And you know who they are: McConnell, McCain, Romney, all of these people who then stayed in Congress and in power, Dick Cheney, for so many years. And these people were called conservatives. And then in the media, you had a lot of people praising Trey Gowdy and Coulter and Matt Drudge, people that are leftists, or if you want to be kind, moderate conservatives or moderate Democrats. I even now see people calling Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, people like that, conservatives or right wing. I don't even get that. These are traditional Democrat liberals, right? who are for freedom of speech. They don't want the communism and fascism. But the problem is that when you have big government liberals, usually people want more government to solve more problems, and then they create more problems and they want more government. It's a never ending kind of snowball. And big government liberalism always turns into either communism or fascism, depending on the flavor, right? So a lot of people are saying the EU now is communist like the Soviet Union. No, they're fascist like the Third Reich, because you have that element which is very pro-war. You have the collusion with these big corporations. It's not about the government owning all these corporations like what would happen in the communist system. No, it's a kind of collusion. And that's what you see with the Democrats now. And YouTube, Google is a great example, right? And look, suddenly they're deleting my channel to please Democrats. I mean, there's no other explanation but that. But that's why I'm saying conservatism in Europe doesn't really exist. And conservatism in our nation has also taken a hit because for so many decades, leftists were called conservatives and they were all globalists or big government people. Even now in the media, even on X or elsewhere, I see a lot of so-called MAGA people, and they're actually leftists, you know. So we're going to have a headache with these people after the Trump term, because you're going to go back to rhino people. And just like you had McCain and McConnell, all of these people saying, I was a Reagan foot soldier. No, you were not. You were like a Bushy, right? We're going to have a lot of people after President Trump leaves that are going to say, I was a MAGA foot soldier for Trump. But you know that many of these Trump supporters now, I mean, they hated Trump in 2016. You know, Mark Levin, Marco Rubio, and all of these people that are now, oh, wow, they're so pro-Trump, right? And it's kind of human nature, but also, like I said, President Trump was able to create a coalition because he is a very stable genius. I mean, the guy is a genius. So I always laugh when I see people saying Trump is dumb, but you also have people saying Musk is dumb. I mean, these are the dumbest people on earth calling real geniuses dumb. In the same way, these fascists on the left, they will point a finger and call everybody else a fascist. But you have the same thing in Europe. I mean, that's how the left rolls. You know, they're always projecting and pointing fingers, but they're hypocrites. And that's why Europe cannot move forward. They're stagnant for decades. Their economy just cannot really grow. And they thought, okay, we're going to import millions of people from Africa and the Middle East. That will help us. I mean, how stupid is that? You're just creating an even bigger problem and destroying your sovereignty, your culture, your tradition at the same time. But as we saw in the pandemic, as we even see with the whole climate change deal, people lose their minds, and it's almost like they're bored or they don't know what to do. They don't have leadership. They don't have a North Star to follow. I mean, they don't have a moral compass. What can I tell you? They're rudderless and they're going around in circles. They're not achieving anything. And I feel like it's because they abandoned God. You know, they don't have that what we have. So we're lucky because the founding fathers created a nation, God's nation on earth. And they created a system that is full of checks and balances. As you can see, it's very annoying to see these activist judges, but hey, we had judges blocking the Biden stuff also, right? And I know it's different, but at the same time, we're talking about a system that is full of checks and balances that in the end, it does fix itself. As we saw, President Trump is now president. What can I tell you? The system works. But that is what we were founded on, escaping tyranny. The founding documents, the Bill of Rights, I mean, this is such an amazing system that they don't have that in Europe. And you would think that after all these centuries being powerful, they would develop something amazing, right? But no. And that is because they've always been a continent, big government power, kings and queens, empires, and so they don't have that history. We are unique because we are a nation created because we revolted against tyranny and created a nation especially for that. I mean, it's pretty amazing if you think about it. And that nation then becomes the most successful nation on earth. Incredible, incredible. And so President Trump is really like a founding father that, stepped into a time machine and arrived now to fix everything, right? To go back to the basics of what made us great, and hence make America great again. It makes sense, right? Everything makes sense. It's all common sense when you're dealing with President Trump making America great again and the policies. And so I know a lot of influencers on social media are actually media people. So, it's a mixed bag. I think most of them just care about followers and cash, and, they'll flip and flop. And they're all like realizing that it's MAGA time, right? Like I said, in 2016, many of them, most of them, were not on board with President Trump. But Trump is the same as he was in 2016. There's no difference. But the difference is the people out there, right? That Americans woke up about the idiocy, the evil, you could also say, of the left, fascism, communism, and also the complete neglect of the rights of American citizens, that were attacked by weaponized DOJ and a fascist system. You had somebody purporting to be the president of the United States, not the guy with the auto pen, the other guy, the old geezer. He actually called half of our population domestic enemies. What the hell? President Trump has a lot of haters on the left. Okay. Because, they're very different. But does he come out and hate on them and call them domestic enemies? No. He does know that you have some bad apples in government, and I think corporations follow. You see a lot of corporations now abandoning some of those far left-wing things because you have a new party in power and a whole new vision, so they adapt. So does it mean we have to trust them? No, it's human nature. It's not about trusting. But you understand that the president of the USA, a real president, has a lot of power, right? So these people are all just kind of following. And in a way, human nature plays a big role. You're going to have a lot of so-called Trump supporters dropping off or complaining. Sometimes if you're in the media, for example, it's easier to make money or to get followers when there's an outrage from the people in power, right? Like for me, it's very hard to make a video about anything because I'm so damn happy. Everything I wanted is happening. I mean, what can I talk about, right? Hey, this is great. Oh, this is really good. Hey, this is excellent. Hey, this is fantastic. Wow, everything's so great right now. You're not gonna excite people. But I did want to talk about Europe because you can see like Europe is kind of like an anchor in a way. We're not really dependent on them, but allying with them, it's starting to become like they're dead weight. And then on top of that, they're ripping us off. I mean, they should be begging and they should be bending the knee to us. But no, they're acting like they're in charge of us or something. What happened? to these people. They also feel like, well, we can go into Russia and colonize it, or we can destroy Russia. No, you cannot. I mean, why isn't there like a grown up that can talk to these people? And you have some leaders in Europe, like in Hungary or elsewhere, that actually tell the truth. But sometimes you have a melting of the minds there. They're melting down, and their minds are all melting into a mush. And you saw that with the pandemic. I mean, they become robotic. They all say the same things. They have a delusion that they're still the masters of the universe, so to speak. And it's kind of sad to see. That's why I say they're desperately pathetic and pathetically desperate. The sad downfall of Europe.